Coming up on Cannabis Coast to Coast News this week.
What's up, you guys? It's me, Susie from Mota Glass and Latinas in Cannabis. We're here at Hall of Flowers 2024, hanging out with the community. Everybody's coming out, and it's a perfect day here in Santa Rosa.
3,000 miles away in Boston, Massachusetts, it was a good day for duck umbrellas. Cannabis festivals from coast to coast, from the sunshine in the golden state of California's Hall of Flowers to rain and mud at the 35th Annual Freedom Rally in Boston, Massachusetts.
With the Meltdown Pumpkin Pie, Nova Farms.
Plus, Pennsylvania's legislature is back in session, so will the latest bipartisan effort lead to the long-delayed move to adult use legalization in the Keystone State, or is it just another window dressing delay in cannabis standard time? And a sign of normalization as Barstool Sports, a leading modern lifestyle online media giant, enters into an agreement with multi-state operator Green Thumb Industries in order to brand their products to 66 million followers of the Barstool brand. And a Georgia pharmacy decides to start offering medical cannabis to patients in defiance of a federal threat from the DEA. All that and coast to continent cannabis coverage as we go down under with a new correspondent from the land of kangaroos, koala bears, and rules football. All that on Cannabis Coast to Coast News next.
Be sure to come and check out Hall of Flowers booths and support small business. And don't forget, it is Latino Heritage Month all month long, and we're out here representing the Latinas and Latinos of the cannabis workforce of California. Shout out.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi everyone, welcome to Cannabis Coast to Coast, Pro Cannabis Media's weekly roundup of cannabis news in the U.S. I'm PCM Founder Jimmy Young, filling in for Alaina Pinto, who is off this week, but I promise she will be back next week. We start with a reminder that if you want to make getting access to this show with just one-touch video on demand, then download our new app, PCM TV. It's free and available on the App Store and Google Play. Plus, you will also find PCM TV content back on Roku and other OTT platforms under the Citizen Green TV streaming channel. But up first, a sign of normalization when a major mainstream brand from the world of entertainment and contemporary culture called Barstool Sports has entered into a promotional agreement with Green Thumb Industries. Now, GTI is considered one of the largest and most successful cannabis multi-state operators in this country. Armin Vakali is the chief strategy officer in charge of partnerships, and he said to greenstate.com that Barstool Sports is a cultural powerhouse that speaks directly to the audience we want to reach, one that values authenticity, entertainment, and modern lifestyle choices. GTI-themed content will soon be part of Barstool Sports shows like Macrodosing, The Dog Walk, and 773 TV, featuring GTI brands like Rhythm and Dog Walkers pre-rolls. Our Virginia correspondent Joe Parsons takes a look at whether this new partnership might signify a softening of marketing regulations for the industry.
I'm Joe Parsons with the Virginia Cannabis Connection, and this is the Virginia Cannabis Report on Cannabis Coast to Coast News. We start this week with the new news from Virginia's first powerhouse MSO, Green Thumb Industries from Chicago. In October of 2020, Dharma Pharmaceuticals was the first medical provider to serve Virginia. A little over a year later, with the new rules set forth by the Virginia Board of Pharmacy, Dharma decided to merge with the Midcoast brand Green Thumb Industries to become the first MSO to operate in the Commonwealth. And after an $80 million deal, the two became one to become the provider for Health Service Area 3. Since then, GTI has grown to be one of the nation's largest MSOs, with 91 open retail locations and 20 manufacturing facilities. Pro Cannabis Media's very own Doug Miller last week reported on the GTI refinance and how it affected their stock prices. The ability to refinance their senior debt via a syndicated credit facility is an industry first for the cannabis industry and shows potential on what can be achieved by the industry when the right people get involved. This $150 million 5-year syndicated credit facility is led by Valley National Bank. The company plans to use the proceeds along with its existing cash to retire its $225 million senior secured debt that's due by April 20th of 2025. Now this week, Green Thumb announced a new $50 million share repurchasing program to replace the existing program that expired on September 10th. That program allowed Green Thumb to repurchase 6.5 million shares for $73.3 million. Green Thumb founder, chairman, and CEO Ben Culver said this week, "This buyback program provides greater flexibility to use our cash reserves to repurchase more shares should the opportunity present itself," and added, "The future is bright for Green Thumb as America craves more well-being and more cannabis." Here in Virginia, they've been very active with politicians from both sides of the table and hope to one day get an adult use program here in the Commonwealth so the brand can expand and perhaps be the first recreational operator in Virginia as well. I guess you can say they like to be number one here in the Commonwealth. And finally, if you haven't already done so, please download the PCM TV app. It's available on both the Apple Store and the Google Play Store. You can always watch the latest shows, interviews, special reports, as well as keeping up with the latest contest and everything that's pro-cannabis. It's free to download, so what are you waiting for? Well, that's going to do it for this week from the Virginia Cannabis Connection and reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Joe Parsons. Until next time, stay lifted.
There are quite a few examples of how screwed up the laws of different states are in regards to adult use or prescribed medicinal legal use of cannabis. First, you've got that entire hemp industry that is still waiting for FDA guidelines on what is approved and legal. Now, since the Farm Bill in 2018 passed, which basically legalized the cannabis sativa plant, lawmakers still aren't the only group that finds this plant complicated. The focus on the THC percentage in this plant causes confusion for ill-informed consumers who enter legal dispensaries thinking that the best or the most powerful legal cannabis has to be the one with the most THC in it. Now add in clueless, lazy, and misinformed lawmakers, and they're all making up the rules as they go along. Plus, add in the ability of humans to find legal loopholes in any rule or law for their own advantage, and you have the mess that has been created in this fledgling billion-dollar industry. Now, despite what the DEA thinks, their definition of hemp is a product derived from the cannabis sativa plant with a limit of 0.3% of THC in dry weight. Two different federal courts over the past 2 years have called that definition too ambiguous and confusing. The problem is scientists, geneticists, and botanists have all figured out ways to get high or intoxicated from THC using Delta-8 or other synthetic forms of that cannabinoid. So now you have two different industries frustrated with the lack of federal guidance over that same plant. Now, some states overreacted by banning all Delta-8 cannabinoid-derived products, but even in some of those states, THC-infused beverages are finding their ways onto the shelves of liquor stores or convenience stores and even gas stations. Now, last week, we reported on the state of New Jersey, who wants to put all the products derived from the same plant under one regulatory body, something both industries welcome. I talked with Jim Higdon from Cornbread Hemp in Kentucky this past week about the state of his industry and the frustrations inherent because of the lack of understanding about this plant. Let me ask you a question. As someone who's in this industry, do you feel like you're getting dicked around, pardon the expression?
Well, I mean, I think you framed it correctly at the top. It's not just Governor Newsom in California who's making bad decisions about hemp and state policy. It's also Governor DeSantis in Florida making bad decisions about hemp and state policy relative to cannabis. It's a perfect example of why the only solution to this problem is at the federal level, because governors have no idea what they're doing. Here in Kentucky, we're fortunate that we've got a good state level policy. Our governor has taken a good, and our legislature too, for that matter, has taken a good tack on regulating adult use hemp cannabinoids in the open market so that consumers are protected, but also businesses are supported. But Kentucky, as a laboratory of democracy, is not leading the federal, the national conversation in like larger states like Florida and California. And in these two cases, we've got two governors who don't know their elbow from a hole in the ground. And so it's a real challenge.
I'm sure.
I've got a lot to say about Newsom, but before we do, let's just talk about DeSantis because it deserves it. A lot of our friends in the cannabis industry are using the worst examples of the hemp industry to characterize the hemp industry, and I just want to nip some of this in the bud. Um, Governor DeSantis in Florida is wrong to oppose Amendment 3 to legalize adult use cannabis in Florida. Everyone in Florida should be voting yes on adult use for Amendment 3. It needs a 60% vote to cross the threshold for a constitutional amendment in Florida. And we at Cornbread Hemp are rooting for it and supportive of it any way we can be. Everyone should be voting yes on 3 in Florida. And Ron DeSantis opposing yes on 3, then decides to throw himself in league with hemp retailers who feel like Amendment 3 will be bad for their business. And so he's supportive of hemp because he's against cannabis legalization. And that's just ass backward, asinine. Makes no sense, has no business in the future of hemp and cannabis policy in America today. So let me just say all that as preface and prologue to Governor Newsom in California is equally wrong-headed and incorrect and proposing bad policy in a bad way to the people of Florida intended on I mean, I don't know what his intentions are, but the effect of it will be to make consumers less safe in the marketplace. It would be one thing for Governor Newsom to suggest that no hemp products could be sold in California retail if the California cannabis dispensary system were above reproach, was a source for safe and effective cannabis for its consumers instead of being mired in a pesticide scandal that would make any California cannabis consumer concerned about getting anything from a California cannabis dispensary. It seems like it's a mess. And what he's trying to do is eliminate safe consumer choice in the marketplace and force consumers into a dispensary system that's lousy with pesticides.
We'll have more of that interview later on this news program, and the entire interview will be available on our website, procannabismedia.com, and our app, PCM TV. Now, there has been quite a mess, needless to say, in the cannabis industry, and a perfect example of this is in the state of Georgia. A year ago, the Georgia legislature enacted a medical marijuana program designed to allow pharmacies to distribute the plant with a medical doctor's prescription. Sounds like a good approach. But the DEA sent out a cease and desist to that state's pharmacies, basically saying they can't follow their own state's laws since cannabis is still a federally illegal substance. Then they threatened that their pharmacy could be jeopardizing their federally issued license to distribute all medicinal products. In Eaton, Georgia, the Living Well Pharmacy is defying the DEA's threat by filling prescriptions written by certified doctors for medicinal cannabis. Vic Johnson has been a pharmacist for 40 years and told the Atlanta Constitution Journal newspaper that it's a new frontier. I really think pharmacies are an ideal outlet for dispensing medical cannabis because if you come to my pharmacy already, we can talk about what medications you already are taking. It makes you appreciate the freedoms of living in adult use state or one of the 38 states that have decriminalized the plant even more. Now, not that states don't have their own issues with some of the confusing laws, and even in some states that have a vibrant billion-dollar market, well, here's Arizona's Karen Black.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. According to the Cannabis Business Times, 11 adult use states are projected to be billion-dollar markets in 2024, and Arizona made the list, coming in at number 9. The state is expected to rake in over $1.3 billion by the end of the year. However, it's not all sunshine in the Grand Canyon state. That figure represents a 7.5% decrease from the $1.44 billion in 2023. The article claims Arizona's cannabis retail market is, and I quote, facing one of the largest setbacks in the nation compared to its adult use peers. There is good news, I guess, depending on how you look at it. We have a limited license market here with approximately 160 cannabis dispensaries, which is about 2.2 stores per 100,000 people. That means the average dispensary in Arizona can bring in roughly $8.3 million in sales this year. Well, last week I told you about Earl Camp, and guess what? It's been canceled. But don't despair, the Earl Cup is still taking place October 5th and 6th in Mesa. For info and tickets, visit theearlcup.com. Earl is spelled E-R-R-L. As for other events, the Marijuana Industry Trade Association is holding its monthly networking meeting September 25th in Scottsdale. And High in the Desert is slated for October 5th in Tucson. That's all for this week's Arizona Report. I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
Two notes from Washington, D.C. this week where no one seems to be moving too fast on any federal reforms before the election in November. This week, a Senate committee approved a bill that would end disqualification for federal jobs if you have used cannabis in the past. And more noise from the Senate on the Safer Banking Act, which is still looking for the 60 votes to pass. Since the Republicans continue to hold up anything that the Democrats are in favor of, it seems like the only thing both of these political parties can actually agree on is whenever there's a threat of a government shutdown. Now, this divide has to change. In the meantime, tribal nations around the country continue to take advantage of their own sovereignty on their own lands. Here in Massachusetts, the Wampanoags have struggled to get investment support, but they did cut a deal with an established vertical in the Bay State. The company and the dispensary is called Theory Wellness. Now, that licensee has offered a $250,000 grant to a member of the Wampanoag tribe named John Marcelino, who runs a startup delivery service called Tribal Fire. That allowed him to set up the security infrastructure and vehicles to launch their delivery service for Theory Wellness. With more on the cannabis scene amongst other tribal nations, here's Tina Tasaka in Nevada.
I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies, and this is the Nevada and Tribal Nations Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. In Tribal Nations, great news for the Great Smoky Cannabis Company located on the tribe's 57,000-acre Kuala boundary. We reported on them back in April 2024 when they opened their dispensary for medical marijuana only for this tribe in North Carolina. The Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians are now selling recreational marijuana to all adults 21 and over, making a milestone for cannabis commerce in North Carolina, where the marijuana is still otherwise illegal. Cannabis sales and use remain illegal off tribal lands in North Carolina, but that didn't stop hundreds of eager customers from flocking to the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians dispensary on September 7th. By noon, cars were backed up on the US 19, and some people arrived as early as 1 a.m. The demand highlights the significance of the milestone, despite cannabis remaining illegal elsewhere in North Carolina. Dispensary officials anticipate generating up to, are you ready for this? $843 million in sales within 5 years. In Las Vegas, Thrive Cannabis Marketplace, the company behind Smoke and Mirrors, is proposing a new cannabis consumption lounge in Las Vegas. This is exciting, in the Arts District, located at 1319 South Main Street. The lounge will feature local art, music, and curated cannabis products. Thrive already operates Smoke and Mirrors, a consumption lounge on Sammy Davis Jr. Drive. A special permit was issued for the 5,800 square foot lounge, which includes a 2,100 square foot outdoor area. Community concerns focus on cannabis odor drifting, especially near share apartments. The City Council will review the proposal on October 16th. That's it for the Nevada highlights and Tribal Nations. I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies and Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
That will do it for this week's A Block, or the first section of this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Remember to get easy access to this show and other shows produced over the past 3 years by Pro Cannabis Media by downloading our free app, PCM TV. You can find it on the App Store or on Google Play. When we come back, a tribute to one of the original members of our news team, the late Rick Thompson from Michigan, who passed away a year ago this week. He was a leader of the advocacy movement in Michigan and the former executive director of NORML in that state. Cannabis Coast to Coast News continues after this.
The people who stand up for their community will show up. We need the rest of you to show up as well. Be the change. Say it with me. Be the change. Be the change. Be the change.
Ready to take your craft to the next level? Imagine faster extractions, purer products, and more profits. Sounds good, right? At Pure 5 Extraction, we've revolutionized cannabis extraction with our game-changing technology. No solvents, no heat, just the cleanest, most natural process on the market. Whether you're a boutique grower or a large-scale operation, Pure 5 has the tools to elevate your business worldwide. Visit pure5extraction.com today. Pure 5 Extraction, because your plants deserve the best.